Hey everybody, this is DM Mike, and this is Chapter 7 Tips for Hoard of the Dragon Queen. And you know what? This is probably going to be kind of a short video. I'm going to separate Chapter 7 and 8, even though I didn't play it that way. I kind of combined Chapter 7 and 8. But here is my first major tip. Let's go ahead and get into it for Chapter 7. You ready? Skip it. Seriously, I think a majority of the things in Chapter 7 can be skipped. And now why is that? Well, it depends on how Chapter 6 unfolds for you. Now, you can disregard all this. But again, I've said this in all the videos. My tips are more suggestions. They're not telling you exactly how to prep each and every chapter, right? It's too complicated because I don't know your players. But anyway, I skipped 99% of everything in Chapter 7 because of what happens in Chapter 6. Now, most likely your players are coming out of Chapter 6 or teleporting to Parnas after a huge battle and are going to most likely need some kind of respite. They're going to need some time to rest to recharge their powers, whether it's a short or long rest, either or, right? They're going to need time. I mean, think about it. They're going up against all the cultists. I mean, depending on how they get into the castle and how things unfold. They could get wrapped up in the Civil War. They can end up fighting Borngray, Asbaroth, Spattergoo, and possibly Rezimir. So there's a huge amount of NPCs and a huge amount of problems sitting there in Chapter 6 that your characters have probably rightly overcome. But when they get out of there, they're most likely going to be down on their health, their spells, maybe even their hit dice. They're going to be most likely in most games, maybe not in your game, but most games are going to be exhausted. And what happens? They teleport to Chapter 7, and right next to the portal is a hunting lodge filled with cultists and trolls and all kinds of traps and whatnot. So my suggestion really for Chapter 7 is just to go ahead and skip it. And what I mean by it is just to skip the encounters. That's all I'm saying. Just skip the encounters, change things up a little bit. Give your characters a time to rest and rejuvenate themselves, because Chapter 8 is the final hurrah, right? So they need to be ready. You know, they need to be ready for this. Otherwise, you've gotten this far, and most likely you're just going to kill your party almost immediately, sometime in Chapter 7, or if you don't give them rest, let's say by a miracle they get through Chapter 7, well, by Chapter 8, they're going to be dead. I mean, they can't, unless you've given them hundreds of potions, they're not going to last, right? So how did I, set up Chapter 7, right? Well, I'm going to refer to my notes here just in case. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, they talk about the portals, right? There's portals there in Chapter 7. I think in the book it says, like, there's the main portal and there's all the other portals around. I got rid of all that. I just felt like, here's the portal. This is where you came in at. And that's all it's around. Now, you can keep those portals if you want to, all those extra stuff, but I've heard in other people's games, sometimes it has caused problems. Characters figure out how to use them, and they get teleported somewhere else in the realm. And next thing you know, you're coming up with more material and stuff. If that's the way you like to run your game, then you've got no problem. Just go ahead. But if you want to just stick to the book and get to the Rise of Tiamat and keep things moving along, well, my suggestion is to get rid of all those extra portals. Or just deactivate them, like have them there for curiosity's sake. If you have a cleric or a druid or someone or a bard or a scholar in your group who maybe just wants to inspect them, then fine. Make up some stuff, set it out there, do some DC checks. Voila! There they go. They've explored it. Now they got some extra information, but it's time to move on, right? So I removed all the extra portals in my game, just kept the main one, and I also removed the hunting lodge. I didn't have it anywhere near the portal, but I did have a path, a large path that had been crafted or created from the portal all the way down to Parnas, right? Now, if we nix, here's the next thing. If we nix the hunting lodge, well, aren't we nixing magical weapons and another NPC like Talus? Sure. You are. Now, the easy way to do that is to take Talus and put her in Parnas. Take Talus and put her in the castle. Take Talus and put her in Rise of Tiamat, right? We're DMs, right? We can come up with anything we want. But, Talus is not really, I don't know, I think in the grand scheme of things is not really that important. She's not going to change the outcome of much of anything. I know there's this thing where she could betray the party. If you want to go that route, then fine, go that route. But I'm going in the spirit of skipping this, right? So if you want to skip it, where do we put all this extra stuff? Well, all that extra stuff, weapons, armor, which I don't think there really is a lot of stuff there in Parnas, or at least in the castle, the hunting lodge, you can put that in the castle. If you want to keep Talus, then put her in Parnas. Maybe she's in charge down there, or maybe she's made her way to the castle before it took off, right? So that's one thing you can do. You move objects around, move characters around if you want to keep them. So guys, that's really about it. That's only a little bit of advice I can give you. Let me see. Here's how I used Chapter 7. A scene setter. That was it. It was to suddenly have everybody have a moment of exhale, to gather themselves, to find time to rest and kind of get a feel for where they are. Because remember, they just came from a humid, hot, nasty, sticky swamp. and now find themselves in ice-cold, frigid mountains. And so I wanted to set the scene. I had a radio drama and I had ambient effects and all kinds of stuff to help with that. But it was a scene setter for me, and it was a moment of exhale for the group. Now, there's trolls also in Chapter 7 that you can use, and what I used them for, I didn't get rid of all of them. Matter of fact, you can listen to the radio drama and you can hear them in there, but what I used them for is like a veiled threat. The characters sometimes, when they're wandering around the forest, could see these huge masses moving in the forest. And they knew what they were, and they knew they were being hunted, and these things were moving around, right? So that's how I used the trolls. I didn't get rid of those. I just kept them out there as a possible threat. It just kind of kept the party moving and kind of kept them on their toes. And, to get to Parnas, or if they're going to have a camp, be careful. These things are out there, right? So that's how I used the trolls. So that's about all I have for Chapter 7, because I didn't do the dungeon crawl. I mean, if you could call it that, when they go through the house. Didn't really see it as an opportunity to RP. I mean, you could if you want to, but again, your party's different from mine. And as I've said in my campaign diaries, to keep the energy high and get to that last big hurrah, I felt like you needed to slow things down in certain areas. So anyway, let me recap before I start rambling on with a bunch of stuff, right? So first of all, skip it, right? We skip a majority of the hunting lodge and all that stuff. If you're concerned about magic items or particular NPCs, move them to Parnas, or move them to the castle, or heck, move them into Rise of Tiamat. You can put those things anywhere. The portals, I got rid of all that extra stuff and just kept the one main portal, so there was no confusion. But if you want to keep those extra portals, keep them in there, but deactivate them. But leave some, ancient magical runes, different things they can research for that, and then have little handouts ready to give to people so they can, they can do their skill checks and they come across something and they can share it with the group, right? So that's one thing you can do. Characters need to rest, right? So this is an opportunity for all the characters to finally find some rest. Now, they can rest in the wilderness, or you could have them rest somewhere in Parnas. That maybe the first night they get there late. Maybe it's night. Who knows in your campaign? But they need some rest. So whether it's in Parnas or the forest, I would suggest giving it to them. Give them some time to exhale after all the things that happened in Chapter 6. And the last two things, really the last thing really, is use Chapter 7 as a scene-setting device, right? They've come from the swamp, and now they're in the icy cold, snow-capped mountains. It's time to set the scene here. They can see Parnas out in the distance. They see these roads, these trails, these giant portals. And then out there in the distance is a veiled threat. But I never had any intentions of having all those trolls come in and attack them. It was just to kind of move them along, like the wolf outside the sheep, just kind of moving around. It kind of shapes and moves the sheep where they need to go. Not in a good way. Okay, that was a really bad analogy. I think maybe the sheep herder moving the group, where it needs to go. Maybe that was a better one. Anyway, that's it, guys. That's all I've got, right? So there's a quick recap of things that I changed and did. Your group may vary. Your mileage may vary. If you liked all that stuff, the dungeon crawls, then you've got nothing, there's nothing much here for you, I know. Just go ahead and run with it. But I would warn you that it's going to be, if it goes south, which most likely will, it's going to be very exhausting for your players. And by the time they get to Parnas and everything is unleashed in Parnas, it can get tough. And then they have to go to the castle and all kinds of stuff happens there, right? And I, for one, and we'll get into this in Chapter 8 tips, I don't think it's personally, I can't see my character spending 4 hours in a castle, hold up in a room and get away with it. I don't know. That's just me. Anyway, guys, that's it. Thanks for watching. That's Chapter 7 tips. And next is Chapter 8 tips. And then I am done with Hoard of the Dragon Queen. And next up, we Rise of Tiamat. All right, guys, thanks for watching. And I'll see you in the next one.